welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. It had been a normal Tuesday evening in Los Angeles. The sky was painted in shades of orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city. Inside their cozy suburban home, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, sipping on his half-empty cup of coffee. His wife, Emily, was in the living room fiddling with her phone, her laughter filling the space as she scrolled through Instagram. It all seemed so ordinary. And yet, something inside him felt off. Daniel had always trusted Emily. They'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. They had built a life, a routine, a sense of comfort. But lately, a subtle shift had occurred. He couldn't put his finger on it. It wasn't a drastic change, but something had felt different. Her attention had seemed to drift, her eyes no longer locked on him during their late-night conversations. The closeness they once shared had gradually dulled, replaced by a distance he couldn't explain. At first, he chalked it up to the stresses of work. Emily had been busier than usual, and he understood. But then, the little things started bothering him. The late nights out with friends, the long hours at work she never mentioned before, the unexplained texts that would occasionally pop up on her phone. Her face suddenly lighting up when she read them, and when he asked her about it, her response was always the same. "Oh, just a work thing." Or "It's nothing. Don't worry." Or Daniel had been raised to trust his instincts, and over the past few months, those instincts had been screaming at him. Something wasn't right. That evening, as he watched Emily laugh at something on her phone again, a pit grew in his stomach. He tried to shake it off, telling himself he was being paranoid, overthinking things. But then it happened. Emily's phone buzzed, a quick notification that seemed to make her freeze for just a split second. It was barely noticeable, but Daniel saw it. She quickly picked up the phone and swiped the screen, hiding the message from his view. "Hey, what's up?" Daniel asked, his voice casual but with an edge of curiosity. Emily looked up from her phone, her eyes wide for a moment before she forced a smile. "Oh, nothing, just work stuff," she replied quickly, her tone too rehearsed. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, of course, you've been working a lot lately." Emily nodded, still holding the phone in her hand. "Yeah, just trying to keep up with everything." She set the phone down on the coffee table, but her eyes never strayed far from it. Daniel felt an unshakable feeling creep into his thoughts. What if Emily was hiding something from him? What if she was cheating? He hated the thought, but the more he thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. The signs had been subtle, but they were there. The late nights, the change in her behavior, the secrecy. There had to be something going on. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. How could he confront her? Would she deny it? Would she accuse him of being paranoid? He didn't know if he was ready for the truth. But deep down he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't ignore this feeling any longer. Suddenly his phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from his friend Jason, who had been a constant support in his life for years. Daniel hesitated for a moment before opening it. "Hey man, you alright? I saw something weird today. Emily with some guy at a bar, laughing really cozy. Thought you should know." The words hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. He read the message again as if hoping it would disappear. But it didn't. His hands began to tremble, the coffee mug in his grip now feeling strangely heavy. "Jason, are you sure?" Daniel typed back, his fingers shaking as he tried to keep calm. "I'm sure, dude. Just wanted to give you a heads up. You should probably ask her about it." Daniel's heart was pounding in his chest. The feeling that had been growing inside him was no longer just a vague suspicion, it was reality. Emily was with another man, and Jason had seen it firsthand. He sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a heavy blanket. His thoughts raced. What should he do next? How should he approach her? He couldn't just sit back and let it happen. He needed answers. But was he ready to confront her with what he knew, or did he need more proof? Before he could answer his own questions, Emily's voice broke through the haze of his thoughts. "Daniel, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft, almost too soft. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with concern, though Daniel could see the faintest flicker of something else. "Guilt, fear, I'm fine," he replied, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. He forced a smile, the same smile he always wore, even when everything inside him screamed to do otherwise. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and as the night wore on, he couldn't stop thinking about Jason's words. Emily was hiding something, and now Daniel was determined to find out exactly what it was. The following days dragged on, each moment heavier than the last. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about what Jason had told him. Every time he saw Emily, he found himself searching her face for any sign of guilt, any indication that she was hiding something. But she was so good at playing it off, smiling as if nothing had changed. The subtlety of her actions made everything worse. It was like she knew exactly how to cover her tracks. That weekend, Daniel decided to do something he'd never done before. He wasn't proud of it, but he couldn't shake the need for answers. He started by looking through her phone. It felt wrong, an invasion of privacy, but the moment his hands wrapped around it, the temptation was too great. He justified it by telling himself it wasn't just about snooping, it was about protecting himself. He loved Emily, but this uncertainty was gnawing at him. If she was hiding something, he needed to know. He waited until Emily was in the shower, the sound of the water running filling the space between them. Daniel stood by the bedroom door, his heart pounding. His fingers shook as he unlocked her phone, something that should have been off limits, yet felt absolutely necessary. He quickly scrolled through her texts, each message more casual than the last. Then he came across one that made his stomach churn. It was from an unknown number. The message was simple but chilling. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll pick you up at 8. The date and time were just a few days ago. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Who was this? Why was she meeting someone at night? The tone of the message was affectionate, intimate. It wasn't just a colleague. It felt like someone who knew her in a way Daniel didn't. He opened the next message, and then the next, each one confirming his worst fear. They were planning to meet regularly, arranging secret rendezvous under the guise of late, night work or friend hangouts. His pulse hammered in his chest as his mind spun, trying to piece together what this meant. It was real. His wife was seeing someone. He quickly locked the phone and put it back on the bedside table, his heart racing. What was he supposed to do now? How could he confront her? The trust he had in Emily, the trust they had built over the years, was shattering in front of him. It felt like everything in his world was slipping through his fingers. Daniel's thoughts were interrupted when Emily emerged from the bathroom, her face still flushed from the steam, her hair damp. She smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. He couldn't bring himself to smile back. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, walking over to the bed, sitting next to him. There was an air of concern in her voice, but Daniel could see the nervousness there too. Was she hiding something, or was it just guilt eating at her? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he simply looked at her, searching her face for the truth, for something that would tell him this wasn't happening. But there was nothing but the same smile, the same warmth that had once made him feel at home. Now, it only made him feel like he was drowning. "I've been thinking about something," Daniel said, his voice low, his hands trembling at his sides. "I think I need to know the truth. About us, Emily. About what's been going on." Her eyes widened, and for the first time in weeks, he saw a flicker of fear in them. She opened her mouth to speak, but Daniel cut her off. "Don't," he said, his voice sharp now, betraying the anger and hurt he felt. "Don't lie to me. I know what you've been doing." Emily froze. Her face drained of color and her breath hitched in her throat. He saw it now. The panic, the realization that the facade was falling apart. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. "Daniel, it's not what you think," she stammered, her voice trembling. Daniel shook his head, unable to process the rush of emotions coursing through him. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I know about him, about the late-night texts, about the secret meetings. I saw it all." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, Daniel thought she might break down, but she quickly wiped her eyes, forcing herself to stay composed. She sighed heavily, almost as though the weight of the truth had been pressing on her for far longer than Daniel had realized. "I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel. But I've been seeing someone else," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit Daniel like a sledgehammer. It was one thing to suspect, but hearing her admit it, hearing her confirm his worst fear, it felt like the ground beneath him had opened up. He didn't know what to say. He was paralyzed by the betrayal, the sharp sting of it lodging deep in his chest. "I'm sorry," she continued, her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never planned for it to go this far." The room felt suffocating. The person who had once been his partner, his confidant, was now a stranger who had betrayed him in the most intimate way. "I trusted you," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "I gave you everything, and you this. You didn't even have the decency to tell me." Emily's shoulders slumped, and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't want to lose you, but I didn't know how to stop it. I thought I could handle both, but I couldn't." Daniel stood up suddenly, the anger bubbling to the surface. He turned his back on her, his hands gripping the edge of the dresser as he tried to steady his breath. His mind was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. "Who is he?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fury and sadness. Emily hesitated for a moment, her face conflicted. "His name is Mark," she finally said. "I met him at work. It just happened, just happened." Daniel echoed bitterly. "Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I can't see the way you've been acting? You've been planning this for months, and I was too blind to notice." She looked down, her shoulders shaking as silent tears slid down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel. Please believe me. I never meant for it to go this far." But Daniel could no longer hear her. He wasn't interested in her apologies. Not anymore. The person he had loved was gone. What remained was someone who had shattered everything they had built together, and the anger inside him, raw and unfiltered, was now drowning out everything else. "Don't apologize," he spat, his voice breaking. "I don't want your apologies. I want the truth. I want to know why." And with that, the truth was laid bare. The emotional weight of it settled in the room like a cold draft. But Daniel wasn't sure what to do with it. All he knew was that the woman he had loved, his wife Emily, was no longer the person he thought she was, and now he had to face the wreckage. Daniel didn't know how long he stood there, facing the wall, his mind reeling. The rage he felt was visceral, a sickening mix of hurt, betrayal, and disbelief. He had always believed in his marriage, in Emily, in the bond they'd built together. But now, that trust had been obliterated. He could feel it crashing down around him. Emily's sobs behind him were barely audible, a muffled reminder of the reality he now had to face. But Daniel couldn't bring himself to turn around and comfort her. Not after everything. Instead, he stood frozen, fighting the overwhelming urge to break something, to scream at the top of his lungs. He had to hold it together, if only for a moment longer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he turned to face her. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands wringing together nervously, her face pale, eyes red from crying. She looked small, fragile, so different from the confident, self-assured woman he had married. It was like seeing her for the first time, and yet not at all. "I can't believe you," Daniel said, his voice low and controlled. "I gave you everything, Emily. I trusted you with my heart, with my life. And you just, what? Decided I wasn't enough." Emily's eyes flickered with shame, but she couldn't seem to meet his gaze. "It wasn't about you, Daniel. It was never about you not being enough," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't plan for this to happen. Mark, he gave me something I didn't even know I needed. I felt alive with him in a way that I couldn't feel with you anymore." Daniel clenched his fists, trying to keep his composure. The pain of her words was a gut punch, but the worst part wasn't even her admission. It was the fact that she had allowed herself to fall for someone else in the first place, to betray the trust they had built. He had never once thought Emily would be capable of something like this. He had thought their love was stronger than this, stronger than the temptation of another man. But now, standing in the middle of their bedroom, he realized just how wrong he had been. "So what now? You just throw everything away. All these years. For what, Emily? For a fling?" Daniel's voice cracked, and he hated himself for showing any sign of weakness, but he couldn't help it. The pain was raw, and the anger was boiling over. "I never meant for it to get this far," she pleaded, her voice trembling with desperation. "It was just supposed to be a one-time thing. But then it became something more, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to end it without losing you. I thought I could fix it. Thought I could have both." "Both," Daniel repeated, incredulous. "You thought you could have both. You thought I wouldn't find out. And when I did, you thought you could just say sorry and make it all better." Emily was quiet for a moment, her hands still trembling. "I'm sorry, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to destroy what we had." Daniel took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. "I don't think you realize what you've done. You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You shattered everything. The trust, the love, the respect we had for each other. It's all gone." And then it hit him. He didn't even know who she was anymore. This woman sitting before him, the woman who had once promised him forever, had become a stranger in his eyes. He could no longer see the person he had married. He could only see the person who had lied to him, the person who had kept a secret life hidden right under his nose. "I don't think I can do this anymore," Daniel said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I don't think I can forgive you for this." Emily gasped, her face crumpling as if she had been slapped. "No, Daniel. Please don't say that. I love you, and I can fix this. I swear I will. Please don't leave me." The pleading in her voice felt like a knife twisting in his chest, but Daniel stood firm. He had never imagined that their relationship would end like this, in such a gut-wrenching, humiliating way. He had always thought they were untouchable, immovable. But now, standing there, he saw the cracks in everything they had built, and they were too deep to ignore. "I don't know who you are anymore," Daniel said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Her sobs became louder, and she reached out for him, but Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. "No, you don't get to cry now, Emily. You don't get to ask me to forgive you. You made your choice, and now I have to make mine." For a long moment, Emily sat there, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if the reality of his words hadn't quite sunk in. Her mouth opened and closed as if she were trying to say something, but no words came out. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this," Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with sorrow. "It's over." And with that, Daniel turned and walked out of the room. His heart was a tangled mess of emotions. Hurt, anger, betrayal, but above all, there was a sense of finality. He had made his decision. It was over. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Daniel stayed in the house at first, but it wasn't the same. The home that had once felt warm and full of love now felt cold and foreign. Emily moved out temporarily, staying with a friend, while Daniel focused on putting the pieces of his life back together. He filed for divorce, and the process was swift. The love they had once shared now felt like a distant memory, and though the legal side of things was happening in the background, Daniel couldn't ignore the gnawing pain of what had happened. The betrayal, the deception. The years of his life lost to a woman who had given her heart to someone else, but the most painful part, the realization that he had been living in a lie. He had believed in Emily's promises, he had believed in her love, and in the end it was all a facade. The divorce was finalized faster than Daniel had anticipated. The proceedings were cold, efficient, and devoid of any of the warmth he had once associated with marriage. There were no dramatic courtrooms, no long drawn-out discussions. Emily didn't contest anything. She didn't even ask for much. She seemed resigned, almost as if she knew the inevitable outcome before it even started. And for Daniel, that resignation from her only deepened his sense of betrayal. The woman he had once loved wasn't even fighting for their relationship anymore. She had already checked out long before he ever found out. But what stung the most wasn't the divorce itself. It was the way he had been forced to come to terms with how little he truly knew her. The Emily he had married, the one who had been his best friend, his partner, his confidant, had become someone unrecognizable. The woman he had trusted to share his future with had instead been sharing it with someone else, keeping him in the dark until the truth could no longer be ignored. Daniel tried to rebuild his life. In the weeks following the divorce, he immersed himself in his work, leaning on his friends, Jason especially. Jason had been his rock during those dark days, offering a steady presence when Daniel felt like he was falling apart. The pain was still there, lingering in the background, but it became easier to manage. Time, as much as it seemed to stretch in his mind, eventually began to smooth the edges of his hurt. He started exercising again, something he had let slide during the years of his marriage. His focus shifted inward, trying to reconnect with himself and his goals. He spent evenings out with friends, went on a few dates, but the spark wasn't there. He didn't feel the way he used to. His heart was still bruised, and as much as he tried to move on, part of him still struggled to shake off the betrayal. One evening, a few months after the divorce, Daniel found himself at a bar with Jason. The two of them had been talking for hours, catching up on life, when Jason finally brought up the topic that Daniel had been avoiding for so long. "Dude, you're doing better. But I know you're still carrying a lot of that shit around. You've got to let go of it, man. You deserve to be happy again. You can't live in this past forever." Daniel looked down at his drink, the weight of Jason's words sinking in. "I know. It's just hard, you know. I trusted her with everything, and she just..." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I never saw it coming. She was everything to me. And then she just wasn't." Jason leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I get it. But you're not the first guy to go through this, man, and you sure as hell won't be the last. I know it feels like your world is falling apart, but it's not. You can rebuild it. You've got the chance to make it better than it was before, and you will." Daniel sat in silence, contemplating his friend's words. There was truth in them. As much as he had been consumed by the anger and betrayal for the past few months, Jason was right. He couldn't keep living in the wreckage of his past. Emily had moved on, and he needed to as well. The only way forward was to release the anger and focus on his own happiness again. That night, Daniel went home to an empty apartment. He didn't mind the emptiness, not anymore. It was his space now, free of the ghosts of his marriage, free of the memories that had once haunted him. He stood in front of the mirror for a long moment, looking at the man who had emerged from the pain and the heartbreak. He wasn't broken. He was bruised, yes, but not beyond repair. The next day, Daniel made a decision. He reached out to a therapist, something he had been putting off for a long time. He realized that he couldn't do it all on his own, and he didn't have to. There was no shame in seeking help, and it was time to start addressing the pain he had carried for so long. Over the following months, he began to heal, slowly, piece by piece. There were moments of doubt, of wondering if he'd ever be able to trust again, or if the pain of his failed marriage would always linger. But as he worked through his emotions, Daniel began to understand something crucial. Healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about accepting it, learning from it, and ultimately letting it go. He dated again, though it was different. This time, he wasn't rushing into anything. He took his time, enjoying the company of new people, exploring relationships without the weight of expectation that had once accompanied his marriage. He didn't want to be the man who rushed into another relationship out of fear or loneliness. Instead, he wanted to be whole again before he let anyone else into his life. Emily, on the other hand, had gone her own way. She had gotten serious with Mark, the man she had been seeing during their marriage. Daniel didn't follow her progress, didn't care to know. She had made her choice, and he had made his. There was no bitterness left, just a quiet understanding that some things were meant to end, no matter how much it hurt at the time. And then, one day, out of the blue, Emily reached out. It was a simple message, a text saying she wanted to talk. She apologized again in a way that felt genuine this time, though Daniel could sense that she was apologizing more to ease her own conscience than to truly seek forgiveness. He debated for a while, wondering if he should respond at all. But finally he decided to meet with her, just once, for closure. They met at a small cafe, the place where they had celebrated their engagement years ago. It was an odd setting for what was essentially a final conversation, but it felt fitting. Emily looked different, less polished, worn around the edges, like she had lived a few lifetimes in the time since they'd parted. Her eyes, though, were still familiar, the same eyes he had fallen in love with. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I'll never be able to fully explain why I did what I did, but I regret hurting you. I never wanted to destroy what we had." Daniel nodded, a part of him grateful for the honesty even if it came too late. "I know," he said simply. "And I think we both know that we've each lost something. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm not holding on to this pain anymore." She looked relieved, a small, almost sad smile creeping across her face. "I'm glad to hear that. I think we both needed this." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything between them settling, but this time it didn't feel so heavy. The past was still there, but it no longer had the power to control them. When they parted, it was without any grand declarations or promises. There was no need for that. The chapter had been closed, and Daniel knew that, despite the years of pain, he was finally free. As he walked away from that cafe, something in him clicked. He had healed enough to let go, enough to move on. He wasn't the same man he had been when Emily first walked into his life. But that wasn't a bad thing. It was just the truth. And now, he was ready to write the next chapter, one where he wasn't defined by his past, but by the man he was becoming.